If elected, how will your government address the rising costs of housing and make life in British Columbia more affordable?
You know, when I was with the BC United Party, there was a bunch of housing issues that we had put forward. So one of the things was, and a lot of them I still believe in. So if you are purchasing a home of up to $1 million, the property transfer tax should be waived. That's a significant amount of extra money that young people have to save in order to get into a house. Thank you. And then, you know, when it comes to the property rights of homeowners, I really do believe that you should be able to do a short-term rental if you want in your own home where it's your primary residence. And, you know, in West Kelowna, I'm a city councillor here in West Kelowna. One of the reasons that I don't believe in allowing short-term rentals unregulated if you're not an owner of the property is that you end up with these residential hotels in neighborhoods, and we don't want that. So, but if you live in that home, there's accountability on site, and I think that's appropriate. I also want the opportunity for municipalities to be able to choose if they, you know, adopt zoning for short-term rental development. So we look at, in West Kelowna, the Cove, Barona Beach, we should be able to have those as well. Or if a developer is coming in downtown, say West Bank Town Center here, we have a new OCP that allows higher density building. So the developer, as part of that DP process, should be able to come in and say, you know, I want floors 4 through 7 to be short-term rental, because we need tourism opportunities in this town. That's a huge part of our economy, and we have to allow that to thrive again. We missed out big time on tourism this year, and it really hit us hard. And then finally, this is something that a lot of people, I haven't heard any party talk about yet, but we're short on spaces, rental spaces, affordable spaces for families and young people and seniors. And if we want long-term rentals, we have to start to create some incentive around that opportunity. So what I think we should do, and I don't believe in subsidies that exist in perpetuity. They have to have a sunset clause to meet the demand of the moment. But I think if you offered subsidy to say, if an owner wants to put a long-term rental in their home and that they should be able to collect that income tax-free for a period of maybe up to 3 years while we help settle out this
30
housing
seconds.
issue. And then the other thing is the Residential Tenancy Act. Nobody's talking about that yet. It needs to be there, but there has to strike a better balance between respecting the rights of the owner and the tenant, right? And so we have to correct that balance if we want people to engage in long-term rentals. And that helps bring subsidy back to the hardworking homeowners and prevents us from having to build so many government-built subsidized housing units.
What changes would you implement to improve healthcare?
Healthcare it's a big issue, especially in a riding like West Kelowna-Peachland. We have a significant number of people living in an area where we have no hospital. And it's great that we can access healthcare services in Kelowna, but thinking long-term, 20 years out, we will have a significant number more people here, about 80 to 100,000. And we have to start to look at how do we bring more healthcare services back here. So, you know, dialysis, we have an urgent primary care center, which is great that we have it, but it's not staffed well enough, and the operating hours aren't long enough to ensure that people can access that care appropriately. You know, one of my colleagues is Michael Humer across the bridge. He's a doctor. He was the lead thoracic surgeon for Kelowna General Hospital. He says, I love the way he says this. He says, if you move to a community and you have a grade 3 child, you would expect that you can go to a school near your home and make sure that they're enrolled and that they're there. They get the public education. Well, the same should be for healthcare. If you move to a new community, you should have access to a doctor. I recently had to get a new doctor. It took me 3 years to get a doctor. And I'm fortunate. Like, many people have waited much longer than that to get one. So we need to improve the access. We need to actually make sure we're graduating enough healthcare professionals to meet that demand. And then, you know, I'm a Red Seal journeyman carpenter, and so we have a lot of people, and they're Canadians often, who are educated abroad. They're trying to come back to, you know, enter this healthcare profession, and they're not able to. So we need to have a qualification program that allows people who are trained and qualified to kind of get up to standard here quickly and efficiently and get to work.
If elected, how would your government encourage more business investment, job creation, and higher wages in BC?
That's a good question. So BC is it's the best place on earth. It really is. And so the Central Okanagan, the Central Okanagan is really the primary destination within the province, and actually within Canada. We're the fastest growing area of the country. We should be thriving in this province, and we are surviving, so many of us. That's not appropriate. That has to change. So one of the things that we look at is how do we create a robust economy so that people can get into places where their hard work is paying off and they're not being penalized for it, which I think it happens so much in British Columbia. If you're a hardworking individual, there's more penalty than there is benefit. And we have to change that. So natural resources are a big thing in British Columbia. It always has been. So, lumber, mining, we have resources that are assets that are available to us, and we need to figure out how to sustainably and ethically access those assets and turn them into jobs that support families. We look at our forests around here, and forest management practices have changed dramatically over the last couple of decades, and we need to improve that. So when we have predominantly lodgepole pine species in our forests around here, those won't live forever. They decay between that 80 to 110 year mark. Then they'll get infested with pine beetle, they'll blow over, they'll burn, and we lose that asset. So we need to figure out how to do that sustainably and ethically. When it comes to mining, we have mining applications in BC that are being stalled out by the NDP under the guise of environmental protection, but these are resources and critical minerals that we require whether we're mining them or not. So we're going then, putting the blinders up and buying them from nations that have horrible ethical and environmental standards, and we're saying that that's okay. Well, it's not. It's the same thing. We can do it better, we can do it more sustainably, and we can bring those jobs back home.
What's your party's vision and priorities for the transportation infrastructure in our community?
Yeah, so transportation's a big thing. How many of you have driven to Kelowna on a daily basis? It's a little bit gross, and it's only getting worse, right? And so we have a lot of at-grade intersections here. We'll look at Sneena Road there where we have the overpass. We need to overpass and interchange our highway so that traffic can move safely and efficiently. Imagine if we had interchanges and overpasses all the way through, and you're coming home from work, because most of our people work from this riding work in Kelowna. You're coming back through, you're able to safely and efficiently move through the highway, exit to your community, whether it be Rose Valley, Lakeview, Shannon Lake. Think about how much smoother that process could be and how much safer. That investment is coming. We're working as a council in West Kelowna really hard to get Bushry and Westlake back on the table. The preliminary designs are there, but we have to push for MOTI to say, we're going to put it in the capital plan, we're going to make it happen. I look at Westside Road. It's a very dangerous road, one of the most dangerous roads in Canada. We haven't seen investment on that stretch of road since Christy Clark. And it's not just major structural changes that need to happen with the road, it's asphalt management and paving, it's crack filling. That road is deteriorating, and there are thousands of people that live out there. So it's very important. I look at Peachland. When you come down Drought Hill and you hit Trepanier, very, very dangerous intersection. So you have residential neighborhoods crossing out onto a highway that have really, quite frankly, speeds that are too high. So you need to reduce the speeds coming down Drought Hill and then into the flats, and have a proper intersection there that's going to keep people safe. So there's a lot of things. When it comes to transportation too, we think about busing and BC Transit. One of the things that I've advocated for my entire time on council is to increase the frequency and the access to rapid transit on the highway. And I'm very proud that council here has approved an MOU with BC Transit this year to add 3,500 hours to the rapid transit route on 97 and 3 extra buses. Because we know if you're going to take a bus from a community and hit one of the major bus depots on 97, you don't want to be stuck waiting there for 25, 30 minutes. You want to know that within 10, 15 minutes max, I've got another bus coming. And I also think too, if we want to encourage a generation of transit users, we need to really look at subsidizing bus passes for kids aged 13 to 18. This would be a phenomenal help to parents. I have teenagers. You are a chauffeur as a parent with teenagers. And so to have access to that transportation would not only be a huge benefit for getting to and from school and work for kids, it would help families out, but it would also potentially create this generation of transit users, which is not a bad thing. But I do want to say something, and it might tie into public safety. we can't do that without addressing public safety either. There's a lot of incidents that occur at public transit or public bus stations and stops, and we have to address sort of the rising and escalating mental health crises and addiction, and just ensure that our kids are safe while they're accessing transportation, because it's not one or the other, it's both.
If elected, how will you work with industry to establish frameworks that enable both economic and environmentally sustainable growth?
Yeah, I think, you know, when I look at sustainability in this province, I think sometimes we give ourselves a bad rap, but I think BC, we are naturally innovators. We are looking to be the best at what we do and to do it more sustainably and efficiently than anyone else. And I think that should always be the goal in British Columbia, is how do we bring, whether it's natural resources, tourism, like how are we doing it better than everybody else? Like I always have this dream in West Kelowna that let's be the best municipality. Like when anyone wants to come to town, like how do we get to the place where we're the best to interact with, to engage with, and to operate within? And I think that should be the goal in British Columbia as well. You know, I look at you know, climate change and environmental sustainability. A lot of the greenhouse gas emissions that we have in this province come from wildfire. So, you know, by improving our forest management practices, bringing some of those jobs back to BC, investing in sort of our natural resources, it's actually going to help improve or reduce the size and the density of fuel within our forests, which is a really important thing. It also helps create a better biodiversity and more sustainability for the future. And so I think there's a lot of different ways that we can look at sustainability, maybe from a lens that we're not looking at it right now. And I think when it comes to that carbon tax, it's not, you know, it's a tax that's putting pressure on the cost of living without producing a result. And so we need to find a way to get results in this province, and I think it's more than attainable.
What plans would you implement to help our damaged wine and tourism industries, which are such an integral part of our community?
Yeah, so tourism too, I keep hearing numbers that like we're about a 40% reduction in tourism throughout this last season, and you know there's a few reasons for that. Short-term rentals play into it. You know, the fires and the smoke we've had recently has played into that a little bit too. But we need to market this place as the place to be, as it's the destination in BC for our wine and you know, stone or tree fruit industry. It was a really tough year. It's been a tough couple of years. My wife and I were down in Oliver, and we were talking to one of the wine owners down there, and they said, I'm not making this number up, I thought she had to be misinformed. She said in that area there was 131 wineries for sale. You know, and it's just, it's been such a devastating season. So that is where subsidies do need to occur. We need to help farmers and growers get back on their feet. I was at a BC Ag Council roundtable in July. It was a great event. We were listening to farmers and growers from across the province talk about, you know, whether it be dairy or wine or, you know, tree fruits. They were talking about their industries, and I thought, man, as a government, we shouldn't be thinking that we have all the answers. Like, we should be talking to groups like this and building that sort of consensus around what is the best way forward. And I said, you know, I was listening to everybody ask their questions, and it was an all candidates forum, so everybody was there. And it was all, oh yeah, well, I didn't mean to, that wasn't actually a joke, but so everybody was there, and they were all talking about how can we just, you know, have subsidy in perpetuity. And subsidy shouldn't be about like being there forever. It should be about sustaining the need in the moment. And so the question I asked is, where are we in the way? Like, where is government in the way? Where are they impacting your ability to be successful, and how do we get out of the way? Because, you know, government doesn't need to be involved in everything. We need to set good frameworks and rules and that allow businesses and people the opportunity to succeed. So, and that's a form of subsidy too. It's just a different way of looking at it. And I think we need to really do that, not just in that industry, but in others as well.
What is your position on providing access to this riding with a second hydro line? And what will you do to expedite this for our community?
We are doing everything we can, I can tell you that. So our council has, the council in West Kelowna and councils and mayors for the last 12 years, more actually, I'm looking at Doug, more, have been advocating for this just with a passion and intensity that you can't believe. You know, we got a long way when we had Christy Clark as our MLA and Premier. There was an identified leading alternative. We were on the capital plan actually at one point in time, and then we were booted off once the government changed. And really, we've been struggling over the past 6 years with the NDP continuing to kick that down the line for us. And you know, it's really difficult when you have very practical solutions ahead of you, and you have people saying, let's study it again. And then once they study it, we're going to study that study. And then we're going to kick it down the line a little further. And this is happening all the time. It's absolutely incredible to watch. And I don't know, it just seems like a stall tactic. So we advocate and press for this as a council all the time. We were just at UBCM a couple of weeks ago. That's an annual convention where mayors and councillors and elected officials across the province come to meet with cabinet ministers and advocate for the needs within their community. And this is something we now advocate with this collectively with Peachland, with Westbank First Nations, with the regional district. It is so important. There's over 70,000 people served by a single transmission line that has been nearly taken out by wildfire twice in the last few years. And we don't need to even guess at how catastrophic it would be if that was impacted. So it is, in my opinion, one of the highest priorities we have in this region, and we're going to get that on the capital plan. We're going to make sure it's built on time and on budget. We deserve that.
But as we all know, there's an ongoing issue with homelessness across the region. This has had an impact on the safety of citizens and the security of our businesses. What would you do to resolve this issue?
This is it's a difficult issue, I'm sure. You know, if you've been I work in Kelowna, you're seeing it a little bit more visibly, but we're starting to see it on the west side quite a lot. You know, my office is on Ellis and Gaston, so right down by the rail trail. And it is daily that there are incidents right out in front of our storefront there. You know, we've had people throwing chairs through coffee shop windows just down the street from us. And, you know, there's a lot of concern with the public health and safety, and there's a lot of complex mental health cases as well that are tragic. And I don't believe that the way we're facilitating that is compassionate at all. I think we're leaving people to their own devices and kind of pushing them back out on the street, only to potentially be, you know, arrested or taken in later that day. And so, you know, one of the things that the BC United Party has been, you know, front and center on for a long time, and I know BC United Party is no longer, but I do believe that treatment and recovery is a model that we need to pursue in this province, even where involuntary care is necessary for people who have very complex mental health needs. Now, that sometimes rubs people the wrong way, but the truth of the matter is we have people that are a danger not only to themselves but others, and we can't continue to allow this to happen. The revolving door of justice, sort of this catch and release criminal justice system, it's not working, and we need to reform that. We need to reform the way we do bail and the way we do trial and the way we get to hearing. And there are examples across the country and down south where, like, there are successful models, and we have to address it. We also need more RCMP members. We need to give the RCMP back the tools to do their job properly, and make sure that we're resourcing our communities with enough RCMP. That's something we're dramatically short on here in West Kelowna-Peachland as well. So we have a combined RCMP force here. It's a split municipal and provincial funded force. We have continued in West Kelowna, and I know Peachland and the regional district has as well, to add members to our complement, but the provincial side, we have failed to add numbers for the past, 12, 15 years. And so we're waiting on the province to do their part to make sure that we're resourced properly so that we can get back to some proactive policing rather than just simply a reactive model, which is what we've had for years now.
What concrete steps will your party take to address the ongoing issues of crime and open drug use in British Columbia? And how do you plan to find that balance between public safety with support for individuals with these addictions and those mental health challenges?
Treatment and recovery is a key piece. In recovery, the way that we pursue recovery in this province, if you are actually at the point where you're wanting recovery, it's not just immediate access for you. You've got to wait. And when someone gets to the point of wanting to pursue recovery, they need it, and they need it now, because that might change down the road. And, you know, a 3-month sort of kick at the can at recovery isn't the way to do it either. We need 12-month recovery processes where people can actually go in, get the tools, the counseling, the care, and the wraparound services they need to get back on their feet. And I think so that whole idea of recovery needs to change, but also the access to it. I think when it comes to public safety, that's really should be of primary importance for us. I know we've had the decriminalization of drugs. I do think that needs to end personally. That's my position on it. I think we need to, thank you. I think we need to, enabling people isn't helping, and we're seeing the evidence of that in our community. So we need to, and safe supply too is not safe. So what that's doing is it's actually putting drugs in front of our young people with sort of this enticement that it maybe is not going to be that bad. This is a safe supply drug. We've got this came from the province, it's back out on the market. And we know what happens is people that are using drugs, they take that, safe supply. That's not what they're interested in. So they pawn it off for something else. And then that stuff gets in front of the colleges and the high schools, and it gets in the hands of people that shouldn't have access to those drugs. So that it has to change, in my opinion. And that might not be popular with everyone, but that's what I believe. I'm Stephen Johnston, so I'm a local boy. I wasn't born here. My parents moved us here when I was 6 years old, so we moved up from Vancouver. I honestly remember the day we drove into town, coming down Dobbin, and I'm thinking, what is this place? Because we're used to, Vancouver, and we come around the corner, and I'm like, what are all those? There's do you remember the Hubcap store in the field? And then there was, Old McDonald's on the left, and they were just taking down the drive-in theater screen, I think, when we moved to town, which was behind Old McDonald's. And then, you got Mariners Reef on the hill, and I'm thinking, this is a weird place. But then when we went up to Rose Valley, where I lived, I'm like, we're driving into the mountains. This is the craziest thing. I'd never experienced that, and I fell in love with this place instantly. So, I grew up in Rose Valley. My parents still live in the same home that I was raised in. I went to Rose Valley Elementary. I'm a Bushry grad. I was the last grad class that went through Bushry from grade 8 to 12. And then in my senior high year, they closed down Pringle here just behind us, merged the two schools, and that's where I met my wife. So I'm married to my high school sweetheart. We'd like to joke that Pringle and Bushry, we married the community together. It was a marriage of bringing everyone together. And we've been married for 19 years. We've been very fortunate to raise our kids here in West Kelowna. Our kids are older, if you can believe it. I have an 18 and a 16-year-old. So we're kind of at that different stage of life. But I've been in the community a long time doing community service. I'm a journeyman carpenter by trade, a little bit of an unconventional background for a politician, but I'm a blue-collar guy. I've been on city council here for the last 6 years. I was a regional district director with the RDCO for 5.5. I stepped down in May so that I could pursue this full time, because believe it or not, this is a lot of work. So I had to clear my schedule a little bit, but it's been a real honor to serve in this community in an elected capacity, and I would be honored to continue to do that in this role as well. I think that getting to know your candidates is one of the most important things you can do. As we go to the polls, there's an opportunity in this election like we've never had before. So independents like myself represent a very unique moment where we're going to have advocacy like we've really never had in this community, where we can bring forward the issues earnestly and honestly, vote with conscience, but bring those concerns to the legislative floor. So rather than being held down by a party politics or sort of maybe the agenda that they have that they're pressing at that moment, we're actually free as independents to kind of move through our community. I'm accountable to you, and therefore the government's going to be accountable to me on your behalf, and I think that's a wonderful thing. We also look at the fact that a lot of people are saying we're going to have a minority government, and we're used to seeing that across this country. We have it right now federally. We've had it provincially in the previous term, where this group of independents that will likely be elected may actually hold the balance of power in this election. And that's a phenomenal opportunity that we have before us in ridings that have independents like myself running. So I'm not a typical independent. A typical independent has to get 75 signatures on an Elections BC form submitted, and then they're a candidate. I was vetted by the official opposition party of BC. It was a robust, many week-long experience where we had 44 pages of many essay format questions, criminal record checks, background checks on me, my family, social media scrubs. It's a really thorough process. So the independents that you're seeing, like myself, are different from independents that you typically would see in a provincial election. So I think when I look at Canada, when I look at BC, when I look at myself, I'm a center-right conservative. That's who I am. But I believe in balance, and I believe most of Canada sits in that balanced state. And I think that the way this campaign, this election has shaken out is that we've removed that balanced perspective and that opportunity, and we've said you're either going to get this polarized option or that, and I don't think that's right, and I don't think that's representative of where British Columbia is at. So I'm very happy to be standing in that gap as an option for people, and I would be honored to earn your support. So thank you very much for listening to me speak tonight.